Okay, sorry about that, that my camera is not working.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so maybe we can start with the role of a stevedore.
Right.
Can you tell me, what are their role
Yeah.
based on your understanding?
Yeah. The role of a stevedore is to physically place the cargo safely on a ship or to remove the cargo from a ship.
Okay, that's good. Who do they usually report to? If
Okay, look, there's so many different ways of doing this, but generically, the stevedore is. Let's just go back in time a little bit. In the 1950s, for example,
yeah,
ships, there were no container ships, so the ships had cargo holds, and they may be full of cars, bales of wool, machinery parts, frozen and chilled beef and dairy products, all sorts of things. And they're all loaded into a cargo hold on a ship manually with cranes and people with forklift trucks and hooks. And so that's traditional stevedoring, is the people that go on to the ship and actually physically get the stuff under quite difficult circumstances and to off the ship and onto the wharf. So it was a very, you've probably seen photos of the old school ships with lots of guys on board driving cranes and operating forklift trucks and, rushing around trying to get the cargo off the ship. That's still the case in many ways, in many places where containerization hasn't been introduced, but most of general cargo stevedoring is done in containers these days. So the stevedore still is responsible for getting the cargo in a container off and on the ship. It's their role to load and discharge the general cargo. In many cases, it's still the same products. It's still the car parts, the refrigerated products, fruit and bananas and car parts, but it's all in containers now. You don't actually see it. It's in a box and it just comes and goes, and no one actually opens it. So the stevedore's role is to load and discharge the vessel, and who they're contracted to can vary. It depends on the terms of the cargo contract. Under traditional container lines, sort of operating the big container companies now, in many cases, the stevedore is actually the same company as the ship itself. So this is this end-to-end logistics chain that you probably hear about, where a company like Maersk or one of the big container companies, they own the ships, they own the terminals, they own the cranes, they own the container yards, they own the trucks, and they own the warehouses. And so in many ways, they're operating the full extent of the supply chain by one company. But the stevedore can be contracted to a ship owner under liner terms, or it can be contracted to a cargo interest under free in and out terms. And under bulk cargo, it can be either of those things. So the stevedore reports to or is contracted by the entity that is in charge of delivering the cargo, or required to deliver the cargo to an owner or put it on a ship. So the stevedore can be working for the ship. It can be working for the cargo interest. The stevedore can be working for both. So it varies under the type of cargo being used, being delivered, the type of ship being used, and the terms of the cargo sale and contract. So there's no single way of saying stevedore reports to or is contracted by X, because it varies. It varies across so many different possible contracting terms. So that it's difficult to say. I can't say the stevedore always works for X, because it doesn't. The stevedore works for someone who's in charge of a particular link or element of the supply chain. But the role is to get the cargo off and on the ship.
Sure. So what would be their daily routine like?
Well, in a container terminal, it's loading containers on a ship using a big crane. In the Port of Singapore, for example, a lot of the big terminals are Keppel, and they don't have people. It's all robots. You can go on. There's trucks and things stacking containers. There's no people at all. It's just and the cranes are robots using lasers and pretty sophisticated software to operate the systems. But generally speaking, it's the routine is in Singapore, for example, a very busy container port. There is no stopping. The ships come and go. The containers are brought into the yard, ready and placed on board, and then other containers are taken off to be sent away to be repacked. Or in Singapore, most of the containers are transshipped, so they come off the ship into a stack where they go on another ship to go somewhere else. So most of the cargo handled in Singapore doesn't actually come outside the container terminal. It just stays there, and it's transshipped somewhere else. So the daily operation in container yards is just constant application of work plans and work processes, whether it's manual or automatic loading and discharging containers. There's not much bulk cargo in Singapore, but say somewhere like Pasir Gudang, where you do a lot of bulk cargo up in Malaysia, the stevedore will have a gang of people that go on board, usually by grabs. Bulk handling is done by cranes. They'll work a shift operating cranes and forklift trucks and other machinery, and then and the same for loading. So there's no single routine that could be applied to the type of cargo or the type of terminal being worked. It all varies. A highly sophisticated port like Singapore, the work's done by computers. There's a team of people sitting in a control room monitoring and planning, whereas to a port in West Africa, where there is very little automation, you'll see a lot of people actually crawling all around the ship trying to unload and load manually. So the routines vary substantially depending on the type of ship, type of cargo, terminal, the size of terminal, size of ship. But generally speaking, it runs a full gamut from you can be working for a stevedoring company as a software analyst, or you can be working for a stevedore company as a forklift driver, or a operator of a cleaning gang shoveling out iron ore out of a cargo hold. So it really varies. Again, there's no single answer to it.
I see. Okay. So what are their main priorities? It's mostly
well,
loading.
Be profitable. The main priorities for these operations are mostly, make money. They're in the money-making business like everyone else, but efficiency and safety, probably the two main things.
I see. What sort of improvement are they looking for in their current workflow?
Well, it all depends on the type, but in a general sense, it'll be just efficiency, no downtime, no mechanical breakdowns, no timeouts or restowing is a big no-no in stevedoring, generally speaking, where you've got the container that you need is at the bottom of the stack, so you've got to move 2 or 3 other containers to get to the container that you actually need to move. It's inefficient, so the planning is of critical importance in the stevedoring world, and particularly in containers. So it's just efficiency, time, and safety and profitability.
What sort of common challenges do they have?
Well, there's competition for different companies. Efficiency, time. They have their own KPIs. How many items of cargo do they move per hour or per shift? Inefficient container planning, inefficient sort of stow. These are all things that cause headaches for the stevedores, that they've got to inefficiently get 3 or 4 other items of cargo out of the ship to get to another one. There's competing issues with prioritising cargo. How much do I have important cargo to move? Which one's more profitable? So there's a number of challenges that they'll need to work across.
How do they usually overcome them then?
How do they? It all comes back to planning, I think. If it's well planned and the ship presents with the plan as it's supposed to, then they'll have an efficient turnaround. If something doesn't quite work out the way they want, or there's a delay, a breakdown, or so many things are out of their control, they might have some customs requirements where containers or cargo need to be checked and they hadn't been planned for. So they need to just be quite efficient in their application of manpower and resources and time, and again, safety. Safety is a big one for them.
What is their safety point of view?
Oh, like most of the operations, it's critical. Big operators they're big companies, the big ones, and they have shareholders who demand well-run organisations, and so their safety priority is very high, typically. In other parts of the world, like West Africa or other ports where they may not have the depth of knowledge or experience in safety application, they may not realise that they're operating unsafely, so they need educated workforce, educated and trained workforce. So these are the sorts of issues they really need to get across to remain competitive.
So who do they report when a safety issue happens?
Oh, it depends on their own internal reporting structure. You know, and it depends on the contracts they've got. So quite often they'll have KPIs to meet for their contracting partners, the counterparties. They've got internal KPIs to reach. So it'll depend on the company processes and who they report to and under what situation there'll be further investigation or. But, you know, generally speaking, the report will be internal to the company and to a certain extent to their contracting partner. Most of the big operators will have safety KPIs and incident report requirements under their contracts. So ultimately, it'll be internal and the company that's contracted them to carry out the work.
So what sort of tool are they currently using? Do they use any digital tools or anything like that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
No, I'm not sure.
Not sure.
Because there's so many. I mean, there's so many different. They may, you know, a simple one might use a bit of paper. A sophisticated one will use very highly automated software. You're talking about tech tools here, are you, or you're talking about shovels and spades and machinery?
Yeah. Whether is it like, you know, tech tools or
Oh, look, sophisticated container terminals will have very, very high investment in technology. As I say, there's laser guided container cranes and stacker and reclaimers where there's no drivers. So the high-end container operators will have invested in this IT world to provide additional efficiency, and by taking people out of the container yard in particular, there's less opportunity for accidents or safety issues because there's no people there. Because they can be quite dangerous places. There's trucks and stackers and cloners and heavy containers, heavy moving machinery. So if you remove people from them, you increase your your safety.
Mm. Okay, so we are not so sure if they are are they tech savvy?
Oh,
It really
depends.
depends on.
You know, there is no they, because it varies. Some are, and the big ones certainly. I'll go back to Singapore. Very much so. Yes, a small port in West Africa that sees one ship every 2 weeks, not so much. There's no need to.
Mhm.
It depends.
Okay, depends.
Yeah.
Any idea if they are currently using any RightShip products for this group
Stevedore.
of? Yeah.
No, I doubt it very much.
What would entice them to use RightShip products? Would there be any opportunities there?
For a stevedore to vet the ship? No, I don't agree. I don't think there would be, because a stevedore is not the stakeholder in which ship turns up.
Mm.
The stevedore is a subcontractor.
Okay, so there won't. What you're saying is that there probably would not have been any opportunities that there'll be any instances that they'll be using any digital products in reference to
No, I wouldn't have thought
RightShip.
so. I mean, certainly they can potentially use the FBR.
Can you
If
describe to me what is the FBR?
it's a feedback report, so
Oh,
if which we have it as part of our platform, they could potentially use feedback report to identify gaps in processes that are attributable to the ship, and then that could be captured, but then we have to market that in some way to the container line, for example, or the shipping company.
Okay. Is there any other features that they need besides the FBR?
FBR, no.
Okay, cool. Okay, this is great, David. You have given me a lot of information for the role of stevedore. If I may proceed to the next role, which is marine pilot,
Right.
what would be your understanding about what are their role?
Right. When a ship arrives at a port, it's transitioning from open sea to a port or a terminal. The idea is that ship has to get alongside a berth or a wharf somewhere so it can unload its cargo. And the ship's master won't necessarily be familiar with that port. And when a ship comes into shallow water with narrow channels and not much water underneath it, and strong tides or currents or wind or swell, he can't be expected to know all the very detailed information about a port in every port in the world. It's impossible. So the pilot is someone that is appointed to come out to the ship and then who has extremely detailed local knowledge, and they know what happens, when the tide turns at 3 minutes past the hour, the current starts going a different way, and so they can safely provide information to the shipmaster to bring that ship from the open sea alongside through the channels all the way in to get the ship alongside the berth. So that's the marine pilot, and to take it out as well. So the pilot's job is at last, a ship might be on a 3,000-mile voyage. The pilot's job is the last 20 miles maybe, or 10 miles, depending. But it's very intricate, detailed, local knowledge and highly skilled requirement for the pilot to assist the master to bring it in that last little bit. In the port of Singapore, you see it all the time. The ships coming and going from Keppel and Jurong and these places, they all have Singapore pilots on them.
You see. So who do these marine pilots report to?
Legally, they report to the ship's captain, and they provide advice to the ship's captain.
What is their daily routine like?
Oh, it depends. I mean, again, because ports don't stop, so it could be a day entry followed by another day departure, and then maybe the next time it's a night time. So they're highly regulated. Critical is fatigue management. So they're quite detailed and demanding jobs, and can get very tense, and fatigue is an issue. So fatigue management is quite important for marine pilots. You don't want a pilot coming on a ship that's tired and fatigued, and that's where things go terribly wrong. So they are regulated in terms of number of hours they can work and the number of hours they must have for rest. So the daily routine can be day, can be night, but it is also regulated by hours of rest. Quite important.
So what sort of main type priorities do they have?
You would talk to a pilot. Their priority is really safe entry and departure of the ship. They have to do it efficiently, but without incident, without mishap, nothing unforeseen. The good pilots are where nothing happens. You don't want to get on an aeroplane with an airline pilot that's tired, or what's their priority? It's to get you to your holiday destination, but safely. A marine pilot is no different.
What sort of improvement would they be looking for?
Improvement, better use of technology, perhaps. Improvements. I think the pilots are always expected to bring a ship in that is somewhat at the extent of the port limits. So I'm sure they would like to have more contingency, better weather, and all these sorts of things that you can't control. But improvements in their own role, I think, is better at technology. And I'm sure they would prefer that the ships that they're asked to pilot and bring in are reliably maintained and well run. So when they ask for certain helm or engine movements, they get what they want when they ask for it, rather than confusion or something breaks, and that's when they get into it. So I think the pilots, because they're hands-on on the ship, they would really like to see better, more reliable ships.
Are there any common challenges that they face?
Pilots across the world? Oh, they're all common. Underkeel clearance issues, ship maneuverability, tug availability, weather conditions, visibility. These things all work against the pilot. Vessel arrival times, better management of arrival times and departure times, so they can get more rest and more time. So they don't want to come down to a ship only to find the ship's not ready. So these are very common challenges. Good navigational aids, well-run ports, a good regulator. So these are all, I would say, common across the world. I mean, there's thousands of ports in the world, under thousands of regulatory authorities, under different cultures, countries, languages. So they all would, if you're looking for common things, these would be the operational, practical things, just to make their job less stressful.
How do they usually overcome them?
The challenges, training and experience. They're the main things: training and experience, and time on the job, and application of new technology when it comes out.
What is their safety point of view?
Oh, that's their main role. So, their role is is to bring the ship in and out of the port safely without a grounding or a collision or something like that. But they also have personal safety to manage as well. So when they get on and off the ship, quite often it's very bad weather, middle of the night, raining, very cold. They're in a small boat and they've got to come out and jump onto a ladder in the open sea that's maybe 20 meters high to climb up onto the ship. So their own personal safety is of huge importance to them, and so their training and quite strong reliance on well-run, well-managed ships is very important to them. So they just constantly train, constantly renew their licenses, and again, that's where the potential for the feedback report might be of some benefit to them.
So who do they usually report a safety issue?
Yes, they do. Not always. Quite often you won't hear about it, but they do.
But who do they report to actually?
Well, legally they report to the ship's captain. They're placed on board by the ship owner to provide service to the ship's captain. Now, if you're on board a ship going into a port, you would think that the pilot's in control because he's giving them the orders about where to go, what to do, what speed, how far, how fast. But in reality, he's providing advice to the captain. And so the contract is between the captain and the pilot. Within their own organisation, they will have a pilot organisation that quite often reports to the Port Authority or to a regulatory authority that governs port management or vessel management in that whatever regime it might be. I think in Singapore, most of the pilots are employed by MPA.
What sort of tools would they be using to communicate and do their reporting?
Well, on the job, they have little computers that they bring on board that help them and assist them in determining where the ship is in the channel, which are all satellite navigation systems and things that they take on board and use to assist them in determining the vessel's behaviour in the port. This is on the job itself. And reporting, I don't know, they might have email or something to I'm not sure what their reporting systems are because there's thousands of them, all different. So, but typically a pilot in a good port will have a personal pilotage computer that he'll take on board and set it up, and he can see exactly where he is. So it's another set of eyes for him when he's bringing the ship in.
So can I safely say that they are pretty tech savvy?
Pretty much so, but they also need to be able to, when the computer breaks and there's a blackout or loss of power or something doesn't work, they still need to be able to manage without any aids at all, and that's where their training comes in. So tech savvy, the pilot is a hands-on, deeply experienced person that takes a ship in and out of port. They're not computer operators as their primary role.
Any idea if any of the marine pilots are currently using RightShip products?
Again, FBRs, I'm aware of some of them using
FBR.
FBRs. Yeah.
Okay. So what will entice them to use RightShip products for those that is not on board with any of digital products? With
I think
RightShip.
FBR is probably something that they could be compelled to use, but they would need to be convinced of the benefit, and I think that would be coming from the Port Authority.
And who will pay for the functionality in that sense?
Port Authority.
Port Authority.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other features that they need besides the FBR?
No.
No. Okay, that's cool. All right, that is great. So maybe we just move into the next role, which is the birth planner. Um, do you have any understanding of, what is their role like of a birth planner?
Well, it depends on what sort of berth we're talking about. If it's a container terminal, or if
Mm.
it's a bulk cargo terminal, or an oil tanker terminal, it depends. So generally speaking, it's just. I mean, let's talk about container. It's
Yeah.
sequencing and planning arrival and departure of ships in conjunction with the cargo availability coming in and going out of the port.
Yeah. Okay. So who do they report to?
Typically, the container terminal.
Okay. What is their daily routine like?
Oh, again, I can't say exactly because there's so many different ways of doing this. But, yeah, it's the berth planner will work a shift and look at the I guess the demand, the ETAs, the demand of cargo and arrivals of containers and departures, and in a container terminal, the idea is to look at all the competing elements of
Yes.
the terminal and efficiently manage the arrival and turnaround of the ships so that the cargo is not waiting for a ship and the ship's not waiting for a cargo. It's all perfectly seamless. Remember, in a port like Singapore, again, if you go to the Jurong, there's containers everywhere. There's an efficient way of doing this with all the ships coming and going all over the world, cargo coming in, cargo going out, cargo coming on, cargo coming off. What's the best way? So essentially, Berth Planner is operating software in container world.
What would be their main priorities?
Efficiency.
Efficiency. Okay. Is there any other improvement they are looking at?
Oh, look, there will always ever present safety concerns. They're not going to do anything dangerous, but the plan is not necessarily involved with safety. He's just trying to get the most efficient number of. The planner tries to do the biggest number of boxes or container movements in the time available. So it's all about efficiency.
I see. What sort of common challenges would they face?
Oh, delays, things unforeseen. So you could have a good plan, but then you might have customs issues or mechanical breakdowns, ship delays, competing cargo interest requirements. There's a huge long list of stuff. So the planner's role is a difficult one because it never stops. You have a plan, but you always, because of unforeseen issues or things that are completely out of your control, you're always reworking the plan, always. So it's the challenges would be common challenges would be the unforeseen or unplanned events. So you've got to rework the plan and redo it.
So how do they overcome them? By reworking the
New
plans?
information, rework the plan. Do it again.
Okay. So what is their safety point of view, or like you said, safety is not their primary?
Well, I mean, the company they work for will have a high safety priority. That'll be a very high priority, but the planning role is largely a desk job. But nonetheless, the company itself will have a safety policy. So the planner will be looking at things and not overloading containers, checking on software on board the ship that makes sure that they're not putting too much cargo on board or overloading the ship or doing putting dangerous cargo where they shouldn't be putting it. These sorts of constraints. That's all part of the planning process. But safety is in a well-run container terminal is everybody's concern, whether it's the guy doing the planning, the stevedore on the wharf, or someone delivering the fresh milk in the morning. It's going to be for everybody.
How do they manage a safety issue?
How they manage it. I don't know. It depends on the company and their policies, the reporting structure, who they are reporting to. I'm not. The question's a bit vague. I'm not really sure what that means. How do they manage a safety issue? They would follow the policy and follow their plans. The container planner, if there's a safety issue, will have to rework the plans so that safety issue goes away.
So who do they report the safety issue to? Basically to their companies?
Yeah, if
Is
there's a
that
safety
be-
issue that they've discovered that they've overloaded the ship, or that this plan that has been given to them has put some dangerous cargo in the wrong area, they'll have to rework it and probably escalate it to management because that might mean that the ship is delayed or something. So I can't speak to infinite number of container companies' safety policies and things. I don't know exactly how they do it, but they will do it. They have to.
I see. Yeah. What sort of tools are they using? Would it be digital tools or
Yeah. The big container terminals is all digital, and a lot of it's in-house, self-generated stuff. Because a lot of these container companies are working against each other, so they have a integrated supply chain that competes against another integrated supply chain. So they develop their own software as a proprietary tool, as a means of improving their efficiency against someone else. So typically they're running their own in-house software, as opposed to you can buy, I believe, off-the-shelf software, but it's very generic. So the good operators will have their own in-house, highly specialized software because it's a very, very complex system.
So can I say that they are tech savvy?
A berth planner or container planner? Yeah, they have to be. Yeah, certainly as operators, as software operators, they're not necessarily software developers
I
or
see.
coders. They're operators. A bit like me, I'm an operator of the RightShip platform. I didn't write the program though.
Any idea if they are currently using any RightShip products for
Container planners, berth planners?
yeah,
To a certain extent, yes, FBRs, I think.
FBRs.
Certainly in the bulk world they are.
So what would entice this group of people, like container planners, berth planners, to use RightShip products?
A berth planner. It would be FBR. What would compel them? That they would see some benefit. We have to demonstrate the benefit to them.
And who would be paying for this functionality?
Oh, the container terminal, for example.
Container terminals.
Which in many ways is it's the same response as the stevedore.
Besides the FBR, would there be any other features that you feel that they would be looking for?
Look, they may have an interest in the greenhouse gas, the greenhouse gas and the port, the port greenhouse, port-specific greenhouse emission. I can't think of the name of it now. Program that we've got. Name it now. But not necessarily a container terminal. It's more a port authority would be doing that.
Okay, that's great. Let's move on to the next role, which is more like the terminal manager.
Yeah.
What would be your understanding of their role like as a terminal manager?
Well, in the iron ore world, for example, a terminal manager is someone who is responsible for that segment of the supply chain to get the cargo on the ship efficiently and safely, and manage the arrival and departure of the ships.
And
And in
who?
many ways,
Sorry.
it's also covering, the port services like tugboats and pilots as well.
And who do they report to?
In the case of iron ore, for example, in Australia, they report to the iron ore company, the Rio Tinto and the BHPs of this world. In the harbour master world, they typically report to the regulatory authority. In Singapore, that would be the Singapore Harbour Master will report to MPA.
And what is their daily routine like for
varies.
this
So many. There
terminal
is no
manager?
standard. Just
No standard.
meetings, safety rounds, reporting, KPIs, contract management, varies, lots of things. And there could be incident response, oil spill response, some kind of incident response requirement, feedback to pilots and tugboats, management of and maintenance of support craft, dredging, hydrographic issues, stakeholder meetings. It just goes on. It's limitless.
What would be their main priorities?
Like everyone else, it's safety, efficiency, and cost.
Is there any improvement that they'll be looking at
thousands.
in their workflow?
Yeah, like improvements would be channel deepening, channel widening, dredging, safety management, compliance, internal KPIs, incident training. Dozens, hundreds.
What would be their common challenges, you think?
Policy, understanding policy, application of policy, implementation of regulations. Common challenges would be management of contract management. So there's a lot of contract management going on with tugs, pilots, linesmen, lines boats, helicopters, and HR issues. Yeah, it's probably better.
How do they usually overcome, these challenges?
I don't know. No
Okay.
idea.
No.
By constant application of policy and training and experience.
What do you think is their safety point of view?
Very high, very, very high. It's probably in my experience, it's probably the number one thing. Safety would be their highest priority.
How would they manage, when a safety issue happens?
Well, they'll have an incident response, incident report. They have closeouts, but they'll have lots of systems in place to prevent incidents from happening. They will look at for gaps and what happened and why. A lot of root cause analysis, and then a look at the policy and see where the gaps in the policy were, and a reworking of the policy.
And as a terminal manager, who do they report a safety issue to?
Again, it'll depend on the structure, but for an iron ore port, it's the same company, so they report internally. And to a certain extent, it'll be depending on the regulatory authority that they're working under, there might be some guidelines to work to report within a state or a national authority as well.
What would be like the tools that they use to report an issue?
Proprietary software, could be email, could be phone call. If there's an oil spill, for example, quite often there'll be multiple lines of communication, so it's very hard to manage. So it depends on the profile and how high a profile it is. But what tools do they have? Anything they can get their hands on, probably.
Do you think they are tech savvy?
Again, it depends. Maybe some of them are very much so, but these people are not employed for their tech savviness. They're employed for other elements, and they'll have probably technical teams or technical expertise that they can call upon to provide that that experience to them. So they may be, but they may not be.
I see. Any idea if there's any terminal manager that's currently using RightShip products?
Yeah, there's quite a few.
There's quite a few. Okay, good. That's cool. And for the non-user, what do you think will entice them to use the RightShip products?
Well, if you can demonstrate the benefit to them, the benefit's got to outweigh the cost. A non-user, they're going to look at the cost and say, well, what am I getting from it? And look at their history and determine whether or not they've got a need for it. So I think for RightShip is to identify a gap where there's a gap between expected outcomes and real outcomes, and be able to offer a tool that provides the solutions to it. But there's also got to be a need for it in terms of they want to fix something.
Yeah.
If they're happy to just have continual problems and it's not really causing them any great heartache because they're not in a highly regulated environment, then it's hard to sell something that they don't need.
Yeah, sure.
Or they don't feel they need.
And if there's a need for them to use any of the RightShip products, who will be paying for such functionality?
No, they would have to pay for it.
Okay, you mean they personally or the company they are working for?
Oh, the company would, the port or the Port Authority or the terminal operator would need to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. What sort of features do you think they'll be looking out for?
Well, it's a bit like it's a common thread. It's vessel inefficiencies. Safety incidents, breakdowns, poor application of rules and regulations on board the ship that they've noticed, things that they can capture in their own systems, and we could provide the service to them that chases up the closeouts and makes sure that everything's fixed up for the next time that ship comes back. We can provide that for them.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's move on to the last two roles, which is like the port operator.
Yeah. In many ways,
based on my understanding,
this is going to be exactly the same as the previous one.
For a port operator?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same category, really. As E and F are pretty much the same thing.
So basically, you're saying that terminal manager and the port operator, their role is pretty similar?
Yes.
So there'll be
the only difference. The harbour master is probably the only difference, where the harbour master is terminal or port operator or terminal manager are typically employed by companies that operate within a port. The harbour master.
Yeah.
So the terminal manager, the terminal or port operator are typically employed or operated by companies working within a port. The harbour master is the regulatory authority that ensures that the others operate safely under the guidelines that he's laid down within that port.
Okay, maybe I should simplify this. Basically, a harbor master and a terminal manager is the same role. Am I right to say that?
No, I think terminal or port operator or terminal manager are the same role.
Sorry, terminal manager and a port operator is the same role.
Yes.
Okay, so a harbor master is a different role.
Yes.
Oh. Um, okay. So earlier on, when we are um, talking about terminal manager, it's actually the role of a port operator.
Correct.
I see. Okay. So maybe I should just change this to
F could be terminal manager / port operator.
terminal manager. Okay.
And E could be harbour master.
Oh, E could be harbor master.
Yes.
Okay. So earlier on, when we are talking about the terminal manager is actually a harbor master.
No, we're talking about the terminal manager. The
Terminal
harbour
manager.
master is the regulatory authority. He regulates the terminal. The terminal will do everything they possibly can to do whatever they need to do, but the harbour master is someone who says, no, you can't do that. It's too dangerous, it's too deep, it's too big, it's too windy, it's too dark. You can't do that because I have the power to shut you down. And the
Okay.
harbour master works under, typically under some government authority.
Okay. I'll just switch this. So earlier on, we are talking about terminal manager.
Yep.
Is
Terminal or port manager or terminal operator, but that's fine. You can leave it like that.
okay. So okay, to avoid confusion, can I say that the next two role that we will talk about is a harbor master?
Yep.
Okay. Can you tell me more? What is the role of a harbor master again?
To ensure that a port operates safely and efficiently under the regulatory guidelines laid down typically by a government authority. Typically, not always, but typically.
Mm-hmm. Who do they usually report to as a harbor master?
Usually the government.
Mm-hmm. And
Not always,
what
but
is
usually.
oh, okay. And what is their daily routine like?
Meetings, study of regulations, meetings, issuing gazettes and promulgations about changes in the port to terminal or port operators, incident response.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
No, it's probably enough for now.
And what would be their main priorities?
Well, safety.
Mm-hmm.
Safety and environment. They're probably the two things.
I see. Okay. Is there any improvement they are looking out for in this current environment?
There's thousands of ports around the world. They all vary. So they'll all be looking for better software, better resources, better human resource management, incident response training, better tugboats, better pilots, just things that make their life easier, and terminal operators that are operating in their ports that don't give them a hard time because they're not able to provide the services that they want.
And what sort of common challenges do you think as a harbor master would face?
Oh, the things I've just mentioned, I think.
And how do they usually overcome them?
They don't. They have to manage with what they've got.
Okay. What would be their safety point of view?
Oh, very high. That's in many ways, that's their role, safety and environmental protection. The harbour master doesn't necessarily care about how much money's being made. He doesn't care whether a ship's delayed or there's a break in the supply chain. His role is to keep the port operating efficiently and safely, so that all users of the port can benefit from an open port. So he's very much sits above all the commercial implications and requirements. He's very much a facilitator of trade in a safe fashion.
How would they manage a safety issue when it arises?
Oh, it depends. They'll have their own. They're typically working for a government entity, so the government will provide safety training to him and safety management and safety reporting systems. I mean, there's thousands of different ways of doing this. It depends. I don't know how exactly any particular port does it.
I see. Who do they usually report a safety issue to?
It depends on the structure, but they will typically report it through whatever government entity they're working for, Department of Transport or the Department of Marine and Ports, or in Singapore it would be the MPA, no doubt.
And what sort of tool that they are currently using?
Oh, I don't know. There's thousands and thousands of them. I don't know what they're using. There's no one answer to that. Could be a scrap of paper. It could be Excel. It could be internal communications.
Okay.
Don't know. Can't really answer that.
So we have we can't answer whether are they tech savvy.
Are they, sorry?
Whether are they tech savvy?
Oh, harbour master. Some are, some aren't. I mean, that's not their role to be tech. So harbour master sits above all that. He's a regulator.
Do you have any idea if any harbour master is currently using any RightShip products?
Yes, they are. Yep.
They are?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
And for people who are not using RightShip products, what do you think will entice them to get on board with RightShip?
We need to be able to demonstrate that we can add value to his role, provide another level of assurance to his role, that ships that are coming and going in his port are vetted, bearing in mind that in many cases the terminal manager that sits in that port has already vetted the ship, so you don't need to duplicate it.
I see. And who will be paying for such functionality?
The person that calls for it, the harbour master or his organisation.
What are the features that you think they will be looking out for?
Interesting. I don't know if there's any particular feature in addition to what we already provide. Oh, look, they'll have it. I think it's going to be FBR type of information where there has been failings. He'll potentially want to see that.
And you were saying that there are harbour masters that is currently using RightShip products. What sort of feature are they currently using?
Look, I think I'm just thinking of Port Hedland Port Authority. The harbour master looks in the RightShip. He'll look at a ship and look at its safety score. They'll activate feedback reports, because Port Hedland Port Authority, or they also are terminal operators as well. So they're wearing two hats. So they're quite interested in their own terminal and what others are doing in their port. So I think the feedback report and incident reports probably, and PSCs are probably something that they're interested in.
Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so that is something that we not have, but um, is opportunities that we can look into to provide for them. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay, that's cool.
Well, no, we do have that stuff now.
Oh,
It's
we do
just
have
that
that stuff.
we've got to be able to convince ports around the world that these things are important to them.
Okay, let's move on to the last role, which is like a port authority
Yep.
person.
Yep.
Can you tell me more about what is their role like as a port
Well,
authority?
the port authority is not a person; it's an entity. It's an
Oh,
organisation. So this is not a particular individual. This is someone or an entity that sits above, say, the harbour master, or above the pilots, or above. They're the operator in general of the port. So in the case of Singapore, this is MPA.
I see.
If that helps you with context, we're talking about MPA in the Singapore context here.
Okay, so it's an entity.
It's the entity that operates and regulates a port. So, you know, if you look at the other things we've looked at, like stevedores and pilots and planners and managers and harbour masters, they're all carrying out roles under the umbrella, to a certain extent, of the Port Authority. The Port Authority is someone or an entity that operates that port in the Port of Singapore. It's enormous. MPA is an enormous organisation with a very big building down at the bottom of, you know, Alexandria there, or whatever it is, with huge corporate structure. And being one of the biggest ports in the world, you would imagine nothing less than that. So their role is efficient operating and safe operating of a port, but also growth, trade. There'll be trade delegations. There's seats on industry forums and councils, and you know it's an enormous entity. Whether MPA has an interest, or MPA or other port authorities have an interest in RightShip, is maybe smaller ports might, where they don't feel as if the operators in their ports are providing sufficiently well-vetted ships to them. They might take that role. Well, okay, you guys don't do it, I will do it, and you'll listen to me. So the Port Authority is can be a very big organisation. The Port of Rotterdam, for example, is an enormous organisation, huge. A little port in Upper Creek somewhere in West Africa might be something different altogether. So the questions are, their role is many and varied. Growth, trade, facilitation of trade, management of state-owned assets, all sorts of competitive analysis and competitive advantage over other jurisdictions. Like in Singapore, again, you know, MPA competes against Malaysia for trade. They want ships to come to Jurong and not go to Port Klang, for example. So the government authorities. So the questions that we're asking about their daily routines, I don't know. Who do they report to? They'll report to a government entity. It might be the Department of Marine and Harbours, or the Minister for Transport, or something like that.
And what sort of main priorities does this Port
The Port
Authority?
You know, it's safety and efficiency, of course, but it's competitive advantage, growth, trade, promotion of trade for the company, for the country. The Port Authority is required to operate efficiently and provide services and the means to operate efficiently and safely, but also to promote growth and trade, to grow business, to attract business, in the case of Singapore, to Singapore as opposed to somewhere else. There's national and local priorities at stake that, you know, someone like a pilot or a stevedore doesn't have to deal with.
Is there any improvement that, you know, this entity would be looking out for?
Thousands. Depends on the efficiency, growth, trade, competitive advantage, those sorts of strategic. We're moving into the strategic area where there's a 10, 20, 30-year plan where there's port developments and growth of trade and significant capital expenditure. So, there's the advantages they're looking for is they want, typically a government entity, they'll want a return on their dollar, and the government will demand it. So if they've allocated, $10 billion to MPA to improve a berth somewhere, then there will need to be a fairly good return for the Singapore taxpayer on it. So lots of it's a big topic, Port Authority. But to the smaller level, they regulate the pilots. They regulate the operation of pilots and tugs and repairs and maintenance in the port, and to a certain extent dredging and channel maintenance, these sorts of things to keep the port operating safely.
What sort of challenges that this Port Authority will be facing in the current landscape?
Well, it's competition. They've got to provide that avenue for business to grow. Allocation of funds, management of channels and depths and ports, a significant amount of cash required to dredge channels and keep ports open. Services and improvement in services like tugs and pilots. They need to be able to provide sufficient services to ship operators and ship owners to keep them coming to their ports, to keep trade flowing, to do it safely. So the challenges, I think, are a bit budgetary quite significantly, and safety and efficiency, regulatory issues, and also long-term strategic goals and action plans on how to achieve them. These are the things that they'd be dealing with. Reporting upwards to ministers and government.
Okay. And as the entity for Port Authority, what would be their safety point of view?
Significant. I mean, they don't go anywhere if they're killing people. So they have to have a strong safety culture, very strong.
How do they manage safety issues?
I don't know. There's thousands of them. Big port like MPA, they'll have their own internal structures and reporting systems. A smaller port, there might be just a few emails and a phone call. So I can't speak. There's no single answer to that.
And as a Port Authority, how do they do their reporting? As in, who do they report to?
Port Authority typically will be government, report through to government.
I see.
Whatever that, it could be the Department of Rivers and Mines and Transport in Mozambique, or it could be MPA in Singapore, or in Australia it'll be AMSA, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. Typically they'll report through to a government department.
What sort of tools that they will be using?
I have no
probably
idea.
Okay.
There's probably a million different ways to do it.
Is there any idea if there's any Port Authority that is currently using RightShip products as well?
Yeah, like as I say, Port of Pilbara Authority is certainly, and I'm sure there's a few others. I just can't think of them now. I think, yeah, to answer your question, yes, but I can't remember the full list now.
And what sort of features do you think, added features that you think that Port Authority would need?
Well, the Port Authority, I think, would be interested in things like, as we said before, their feedback report, incidents, PSC history, and the Port Authority is where there's a stronger interest, or there should be a stronger interest in greenhouse gas emissions.
I see. And who pays for such functionality?
Well, they would.
Okay.
I'm not sure who else, if something won't answer that.
And for entities that is not using RightShip, what do you think will entice them to come on board?
I think the greenhouse gas thing is a good entry point.
Mm.
The marine portals and all the greenhouse information that we can provide to them, because that's becoming more and more important these days. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good entry, and I think that would be a good way to start.
Okay, that's great. David, I think thanks for your time. You have given me a very good understanding of these 6 different roles. And okay, the last one is an entity and not an individual contributor. But thank you so much for your time. I really wish that I could show my face, but there's something wrong with the setup here.
Oh, okay, no problem. Are you in the office today?
I'm not in the office today. I'm working from home, and
Yeah,
actually, I'm very new to RightShip. It's just my first month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
welcome on board.
thanks to thank you so much, David. I really learned a lot from you today about these 6 different types of roles, and this is part of the research that we are building for actually for RightShip platform itself, but we are starting off with ports and terminals, and that's the reason why I'm speaking to you today.
Okay, no
So
problem. I
yeah,
think you'll catch up with Anchor and others perhaps later on.
yeah. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope that if there's any need, I can still reach out to you.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks for your time, and have a good weekend.
Okay, same to you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and take care there. See you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.